It looks good now.
I did.
Now it looks great.
Yeah.
Is my mic working?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. So we are live. For many of you, you are starting to see us if you've logged in early. But this is our usual thing where we're just connecting all of the little connections behind the scenes so that things will run smoothly and lovely when they're supposed to it too. So
How you
bear
doing,
with
everyone?
us. Yes. Hi, everybody. If you're on Crowdcast, you can let us know that you're here. And there we go. I see that going. Seems like everything's connecting the way that it should, thankfully. Okay. And so as we're rolling along, thanks everybody for checking us out. We always, like I said before, I know that Facebook Live just went live with our association chat stuff, and we're just setting up. We're setting up. This is early. This is pre-show. So you get to see us fix our hair and de-shine and all of that lovely stuff before we go live at 2 p.m. Eastern. So.
And it's my return back after 3 weeks.
Oh, three long weeks. I missed you so much.
I was ready to be back last week, but I got called into a meeting. When the boss calls,
Well,
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
I jump.
Yeah.
Well,
until
that day, you are the boss.
There you go.
Word. Word.
Okay. So, and Tamala, I put something in Slack really fast. Okay. That is a change to our sponsorship script, just so you know. Yes, because Nabil has a role in it now. Yay. Yay. We'll have to figure out how to do these, play around with these a little bit. But
I was listening to, I like RuPaul's podcast, What's the Tea? And they do their sponsorships. I mean, it's clear it's an ad, but they do it in an interactive, friendly way.
I love that.
It's really good.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that.
Oh man, is Slack being weird with me again? Let me do the website one.
Oh gosh, what? Do you have a window behind you, Tamala?
I do.
You are backlit, kind of.
I changed the camera. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
All right. So.
Tamala, there's an amazing picture of you on the ASAE annual page. I think it was when you were talking in the onlyness speaker, or someone. There was one point where you spoke up and people heard you.
Okay.
It looks like because you're right next to Desiree, and you look amazing.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's not hard to do for Tamala. Oh my gosh.
This is just great for my self-esteem.
You know what though?
Well, she has her angle down.
Yeah, well, I need that. I mean,
this is the Tamala. See, I'm now learning that it's really hard for me because I'm learning that direct is now my best look. Because I used to do this.
So what's my favorite? What's my best look, guys?
Every look is amazing, Kiki.
Oh, I like that answer. I love that answer. That's so fun. Of course, yes.
I'm just going to put them down a bit.
All right. So there is so much happening. I loved that news story you found. So I'm definitely going to, when the time is right, throw that over to you. So don't be surprised.
I just watched too many horror movies to have a mirror in my shot.
Oh.
Yep.
And I am not going to watch the movie It. I'm just going to put put that out there.
Oh, you know
Come
what
on.
Dangerous Clowns?
Come
No.
on.
No.
I know
No.
DJ and I want to see it. Come on, do it. Peer pressure.
I love scary movies. Like I love scary movies. And so I want to see it. I want to see Mother ! Like have you seen the ads for that?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah. We should. Oh, we should. Oh, I love that idea.
Girl, I'm going to spill those beverages. Really? What are you going to do? I can't take. I mean, I'm notorious for watching movies like this.
I love them. No. I love scary movies. We'd have to do like popcorn and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if there could be an association chat scary movie like marathon or something. It's different than like a book club.
we could do a debrief.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, everybody, if you have tuned in or are watching this live, this is the pre-show. This is before the show gets started. You are at the right place. This is almost the right time, but this is just when we get all of our little connections made so that we are streaming live properly to Periscope and to YouTube and to Facebook and of course on Crowdcast. So if you want to come into Crowdcast and interact with us, you'll be able to ask our guest directly some questions. We also try to keep an eye on the live stream that's happening on Facebook, but there's a little bit of a delay usually, so that's hard for us to watch both places. But that's the dealio. That's the exciting part. So I hope that that everyone's having a good time. I've had a fantastic week so far. I mean, it's just, how are you guys doing?
Do tell about your fantastic week.
No. It's nothing super exciting, but I have somehow ended up with this week where I don't have a ton of meetings scheduled. And so,
awesome.
Yeah. And so next week is not the same. Next week is insane. But this week is good. This week is, I'm getting some stuff knocked out. And by the end of this week, I should have several projects that I've been trying to kind of move along wrapped up. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
I got travel and more travel this week.
Oh. Oh, no.
New Orleans to the Big D to Detroit and then on back home.
Wow. Any travel excitement that is going to be along the way? Do you try to work in like visits to special restaurants or shops or anything?
Well, for both, I'm going to New Orleans for a board meeting, and our organization's annual meeting is also in New Orleans, so I have time out to scout out some things.
Cool.
Then in Detroit, I'm going to try to say hey to a few people because I was unable to attend the Delp reunion this year.
We missed you there.
I missed you all. I was here.
But you were starting your new job.
Right.
Congratulations,
However,
Ms. ED.
Yeah, thanks. But it looks like Cabo is in play for the birthday vacation, so yay.
What? Yeah.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice.
Whole bunch of nothingness, hopefully.
Oh, seriously.
All right.
I've had a quiet week. Back to work finally, a full week. So it's nice to transition from vacation to the Labor Day weekend to the Labor Day week.
Yeah.
So this is the first full week.
Oh my gosh.
Back.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're back with us because I was missing you so much. We were holding down the fort. We were doing well, but it's not the same without you.
Never the same.
So, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I missed you all as well. I really wanted to be here. But all of them I wanted to see. I really was looking forward to some of those sessions.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
now I will travel on Wednesdays, not Tuesdays.
Well, we had some crazy difficulty with the tech stuff, which is why I'm so I think it's so important to I have to go live earlier with this. just so we can make sure that everybody's been able to test their tech and are connected. Sharon, we've got to have her back on at some point because she didn't really get started until much later. So.
I have more Post-its on the wall now. Look.
Uh-oh.
So I'm graphing our activities by impact and effort.
It looks like it's
nice.
I actually have metrics on impact, right? Because I know how many hits we get. I know how many people apply for things.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I was not using them accurately when I was doing this. So I'm going to have to edit this. But the effort part is a little bit of a guesstimate, not quite a guesstimate, I would say.
Yeah.
I have not been tracking effort into a lot of
Oh my gosh. So I want to welcome, I see that EB, you're on, and I see that, of course, Jeff is on, and he's going to be joining us in a little bit. And Joan, hi, Joan. And Gina, I'm not sure that I'm familiar with you, but I love the spelling of your name. Hi, Gina. So welcome to everyone. So happy to see you today. And if you are tuning in on Periscope, or if you're tuning in, watching through Twitter, or watching through YouTube, or watching through Facebook, definitely give a shout out to us. Let us know if you have questions. Let us know what you think of the show. And share with your friends and your colleagues. If you like Association Chat and you want more of this, we love hearing from you and love finding out what people are interested in, and would love to talk to your friends too. So go ahead and share away. And if you have comments or questions, always let us know. You guys, you want to know something that I did? I've got to tell you before we do the official show.
Okay.
I signed up I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I don't know how accurate they actually are, but this Ancestry DNA kit thing, I am so intrigued. Now I have a sister-in-law who's like really into, digging into my family's past and stuff like that. And so I feel like I have some details, but
have you done the exam yet? Have you put spit into it?
I haven't yet. I have the thing here.
It's a little gross. I did 23 and I personally did 23andMe.
So did
Yeah. I discovered, so I'm Nicaraguan, Chinese, and Egyptian. So I was expecting for my Nicaraguan grandmother, some Native American, and I came out 12.5% Native American. I'm like, yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
But then like a lottery.
Wow.
Oh, that was like, yes, I am 12%. Come on.
No,
That's a great grandparent.
That is a great grandparent. I'm happy for you.
I'm hoping to be surprised by something. I feel like, everything's just very boring, I think, on my side. And so
one thing I'm gonna caution you for, because I did 23andMe. It was my Valentine's Day gift to both of us. That because we are women and we are double X chromosome, you don't get the full report because you need a direct relative that's a Y chromosome. So my 23andMe report's only half full because we need someone with a Y chromosome to get the other half of it. So I'm
look at Nabil over there smiling.
Yeah. So I'm sending.
I got my dad test too, so I now know which parts of my genes are my dad's and which parts are my mom's.
Oh, that's so cool. And I see Elizabeth said, I did it. It's awesome. I'm adopted and I've been learning all sorts of things. That's so cool.
And Joan did National Geographic. I looked at that one too.
Ooh, we have to connect offline. Calvin and I are considering adoption, so I need to hear it from your perspective.
How neat.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Jeff says over here that it looks like the sixth poll question is missing its answer. I see it on mine, so I'm not sure why it may not be showing up for everyone. So I'm not sure what that's about. Sorry, Jeff. It's showing up on mine though, so maybe some people can see it at least. And that sixth question, it was about like what I see is with which of these orthodox beliefs shape your organization's thinking about the future of aging. And then the choices are older workers are less productive, older workers cannot learn, or older workers are more costly as choices. So I can't wait to see how people vote and what they come up with. So, and what the answers are. Jeff's going to tell us all of that a little bit later. So here it is. It's 2:00. And you guys, you know, before we get started, let's say a few words about our fantastic sponsor, Fontiva. Okay, Nabil?
Is that me? That's me. Oh, I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling it up. I was not ready for it.
Yeah.
That's great because we love Fontiva.
Yes, we do. Do you know why?
I know why. Is it because they are the only end-to-end association management software built on Salesforce? The most powerful CRM database ever.
Oh my gosh, that is just one reason, Tamala. But you know what? It could also be because they prototyped the first virtual reality business intelligence tool for associations.
That's pretty innovative. But that's just part of the reason why we're thankful for their sponsorship of Association Chat. If you are watching us live on Crowdcast, you can click on the button below and for the Fontiva blog for some great posts for association execs.
Thank you for listening to our sponsorship message. And now we can start the show. This is our attempt at acting, I think. And so we're gonna get better at this.
We will.
Point is, Fontiva is great, and we appreciate their sponsorship. However poor our acting skills might be. Okay. Welcome to Association Chat, your weekly online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with the topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host and producer of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italienne, and I am here with my fabulous co-hosts, together again, Tamala Blaylock, an association executive director who has a passion for helping others rise to the top, and Dr. Nabil El Garouri, who is back this week and who is intrigued by all things graffiti. Yay, We're here. All right.
Thank you.
So each week, before we jump into our interview and special guests, we like to touch on 1 to 2 stories that we think have an impact on association executives and the industry that we support. And this week's news item is pretty disturbing, actually. It came from Board Source and was posted on Associations Now, I believe. And yes. Nabil, you shared this with us. You want to talk a little bit about this report that came out and this news item?
So I think this is a follow-up to Lead with Intent. And what they found was that a research program that they've done before.
In 1994.
In 1994, 80% of board members were white, and we're pretty much at the same percentage today. Actually, I think
we've gone down. We've gone down from 86% white to 82% white.
Yeah, so it is still pretty low. And so there's still so much room for improvement. I think boards would benefit so much from having more diverse members on their boards. I mean, it's a pretty simple, point that more diversity of thought processes, of perspectives, and that will help you avoid, the Kendall Jenner Pepsi strategy.
Yeah. Well,
right. I mean, there was clearly no one in that of color in that room. Clearly.
Yeah.
What struck me most, the takeaway from that report is that, to quote Don Sweeney from National Restaurant Association, diversity is a given. Inclusion is a choice. So when they were polling board members and board directors, a lot of them were like us, over 40% were saying that they definitely want to see much more diversity than they have, and they were not satisfied with the amount of diversity that they had in their board and leadership. However, when they asked them the next question, which is, what are you doing to make sure that you have more inclusive and diverse it was either little to nothing were the responses. So the intent is not matching up with the actions. And I think that's probably the most powerful takeaway from that report. This is not litigating, or moralizing on intent or goodwill or feelings. It's really challenging what are the action plans, and that's what it ends, that there needs to be action if that is your intent.
This is really helpful data for me today, because tomorrow I'm chairing our first D&I staff group. We're revamping it. Wow. And this data is very helpful, because my board right now, my APA board, is 50% people of color. So it's pretty diverse. Now, we have not been intentional in that. And so the fact that it's happened organically is nice. But I was talking to my supervisor, and
yes.
Organically, but it could also disappear organically if we are not thoughtful and maintaining that vision regularly.
Can I just, I think another point on that is just that something I've noticed since you guys have come on in being on the show and being co-hosts in this is that our guests that we have, a lot of them, it's definitely become more diverse, very obviously more diverse. And I don't think that there was definitely never ever a point where I thought that I wasn't, advancing or trying to bring on more diversity. But I think it's the intentionality point, right? I think that it's that. I think that it's, unless who do I end up seeing in my circles around me most often is other people who look like me. And as a result of that, I'm not making as many connections who would represent other perspectives. And I think something I've noticed since you guys have been on, it has been that we have gotten more perspectives and more diversity. And it makes me more aware now as I invite people on and stuff like that, it's like, okay, am I really expanding my horizons and really purposefully trying to grow? And it's a challenge. It's interesting though. I'm learning something about myself through this. So anyway, hard stuff, but it's interesting news. And thank you so much for sharing that. This week, we are talking with Jeff DeCania of Foresight First, and we're talking about this really interesting topic of 6 things you probably didn't know about the future of aging. And so I think that this is a fascinating topic. I'm so excited that Jeff's on. Jeff has been on before. He's talked about the role of foresight with boards and leadership. Jeff, welcome to Association Chat yet again. It's been a while.
It's been a while since February, yes. So happy to be back, and happy to be on the first time with Nabil and Tamil, and looking forward to our conversation and then comments and questions from the participants.
Well, you better watch out, because Nabil and Tamila, they are tough. They ask hard questions.
Good.
So it's been a while since you've been on the show, and I'd like to talk a little bit about foresight. Why do you think it's so critical for association boards to be involved in the work of foresight? I just kind of want to set up this discussion as we go into talking about this topic.
Sure. Well, and I appreciate the fact that you were all talking about the Leading with Intent report from Board Source, because I was looking at that with a great deal of interest, and I think anyone who observes what's going on with boards today, as I try to do, anyone who is working with boards trying to help them improve their performance can look through that report, and I haven't read it cover to cover yet, but I've skimmed it, can see plenty of things in there to be concerned about, including, right at the top line, this issue around the lack of diversity. And in fact, actually, Nonprofit Quarterly and Board Source are conducting a webinar actually later this afternoon on this issue of the lack of diversity on nonprofit boards. I think what's particularly troubling about it to me is the fact, if you look at the respondents to this survey, and I'm going to answer your question in a second, Kiki, but I just wanted to comment on this. What I think is particularly troubling to me is that relatively small percentage of the respondents to that research are associations or foundations where you would expect, just generally speaking, that there might be less diversity. Often foundations are family foundations, or they're controlled by a company, so they might have less native diversity to their groups. Something like almost 2/3 of the respondents to that survey are public charities, relatively small nonprofits, where you would think that they would make a strong effort to bring greater diversity to their boards, and yet, as you were pointing out, something like 20% of the chief executives who were responding said, yeah, we know we're not diverse enough, but we have no immediate efforts to do anything about it.
Right.
Which is especially troubling. And I think one other aspect before I get on to your question, because it relates to this, is that we focus on this from the standpoint of racial and ethnic diversity and sexual orientation, so on and so forth. And those are extraordinarily, gender diversity, that's extraordinarily important. But I think one thing that is not, for as far as I can tell, and I could be wrong about this, I need to look at the report more closely, but my initial scan says that it really doesn't talk anything about cognitive diversity, which we need team.
Right.
And I know you've talked about this on past association chats. Cognitive diversity is extraordinarily important to the work of any group, the work of teams, and certainly the work of boards. So just to get back to your question, I think it's interesting, the phrase, for boards to be involved in the work of foresight. And I think the way that I would phrase it is that boards aren't involved. Boards have a unique responsibility the term that I've coined, the duty of foresight. And it's unique to them. It doesn't belong really to anyone else in the association. It doesn't belong to the chief staff executive. It doesn't belong to the staff. It doesn't belong to task forces or committees. This is a unique and I think more important moral obligation, really, of boards of directors. And it's created by the fact that we are living in these very unusual times where we have, as I've been saying for a long time now, we're experiencing a transformation of our society even as we speak. That transformation is getting deeper, faster, more intense with each passing day. And it's critical that in this environment, when every organization is going to be affected, when every field of human endeavor is going to be reshaped by what's happening all around us. And of course, we know the forces that are responsible for this transformation. That's certainly technology, but it's also societal shift and cultural shift and economic shift and scientific shift and demographic shift and so on and so on and so on. All these things happening at once. Since everyone's going to be affected, we really need a different approach for boards for what they should be doing. So in this context, I think that it's essential for boards to be focusing their attention and as much of their attention as possible on the duty of foresight, this unique responsibility that they have, and then taking action accordingly.
Yeah, it's such a complicated thing, and I didn't want to get too far away from our previous discussion, so that I left off some questions that Joan is asking over here. I mean, that's one of the big benefits of having, this platform, is that people are able to ask their questions. And so I don't want to brush past those. She asked Jeff and everyone, doesn't the cost of serving keep many organizations' boards from being more diverse? If one can't afford to attend meetings or doesn't have the right clothing, isn't it more difficult? Or say there's a lot of social activity involving alcohol and one is a religion that doesn't allow it. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing that happens, and I think unintentionally, when we talk about diversity for any group that isn't heterosexual white male in most cases, is that these are demographics that also suffer from economic disparities. Sex demographic, that are educated and fluent. Excuses or reasons you don't hear for specifically LGBTQ and disability diversity is that there are to which I push back, and there are plenty it's for perhaps you don't have the cultural competency to look at those people. So I do think to get to the place that people present anyone on the level of board of directors who's not like a economic disparity. They don't want us to in our head at the same time. Get people who are also highly educated and fluent.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I think that. Oof. Okay, I'm having a little bit of feedback from. Okay, sorry guys.
I don't hear any.
Okay, sorry guys. That was just a little bit weird. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but it sounded like robots talking in my ear. Very, very strange. They're becoming aware.
That's AI in a couple years.
Yes, I know.
It'll replace us.
So for me to get focused, I'm going to bring the focus back, focusing the attention of boards. This is something that you were talking about, Jeff. You're talking about focusing the attention of boards, to use your words, on the duty of foresight. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that?
Well, I think that the first thing to say is that the idea here is not to turn boards into futurists, right? That's not what we're trying to do. Board members have day jobs that they have to do, and we already have very capable professional futurists to do the work of understanding long-term futures. What we need to do, however, is we need to help our boards become the best possible stewards and the best possible decision makers. And so what I like to do first is point out to them the fact that they have this duty of foresight, and it demands of them. It makes absolutely a necessity, the idea that they need to devote their attention to learning as much as possible with the future. They have a responsibility to their predecessors, right? Their organizations got to this point in their history because their predecessors made important efforts often over a long period of time to bring the organization to today. They have stakeholders to which they have a responsibility. And perhaps most importantly, especially from a stewardship perspective, they have a responsibility to their successors, right? And these are successors that some of whom they will know because they meet them in the short term, but these are successors that many of whom they will never meet because they're long-term successors. And so as a consequence of these, responsibilities that they have to all of these groups, and of course we put a lot of emphasis on current stakeholders, but it's not just current stakeholders, it's also future stakeholders. So, given all of these responsibilities, we've got to help them, really concentrate their attention on what's most important. And then the second thing, that I'm doing is really saying, okay, look, we're not going to devote our attention to a very long-term future because anything more than 120 months out is what I would regard as the futurism zone, right? That's really the province of our professional futurists. So what I try to do is I give them a 120-month shifting time frame, and the first 18 to 36 months of that time frame is really what I call the strategy window, and that's a period of time in which the focus is on how can we build value creation with our stakeholders, how can we co-create with them, what kind of value do they seek, and that sort of thing. That's really what we're trying to accomplish in our strategy window. And then the period beyond our strategy window, those 36 months beyond strategy, is really what I refer to as the foresight horizon. So those 84 months, or 7 years, right? So you add up 36 and 84, you get 120. Those 84 months is really about how do we learn about plausible futures that could occur within that 84-month window, and how do we want to focus our attention on understanding them and taking actions, whatever those actions might be, to prepare for them, to anticipate and prepare for them. And so another step that we would take in that regard is to have them use the Foresight First learning cycle to sort of understand what the possibilities are and then go from there. So there's a variety of things that I'm trying to do to take them from a fairly broad understanding of their duty of foresight and then narrowing it down to let's have the right conversations and focus our attention on the right issues so that those conversations are productive, they're generative, and they help the organization move forward in the appropriate way.
So the future of aging. I mean, this is obviously one of those topics that you might be bringing to their attention. It's the subject of your briefing that you're having coming up like November 2nd, correct?
Yep.
And so why did you choose this topic? Why is it something that you feel is important for people to know about and boards to hear about?
So just to rewind a little bit, as probably most of the people on here today know, back in June, I did a briefing on artificial intelligence. That was the first briefing that I did. And, that's when Nabil was alluding to it earlier, artificial intelligence, and you were talking about robots talking in your ear. And I think we're actually closer to that than we realize. It's not our robot overlords, but it's a weak AI that can do a lot more than we realize. But it's a very complicated and increasingly complex issue, artificial intelligence, that has so many permutations with regard to how we do our work. And so after doing that briefing in June, I really wanted to choose a topic for November that was equally as complicated and complex as AI, but have it not be about technology, because I think that, or at least not primarily about technology, because I think it's very easy to be seduced by the idea that all of the issues driving societal transformation are about tech, right? Because that's pretty much all we hear about. It's pretty much all we talk about. There's so much discussion these days around AI, around the blockchain, around the Internet of Things, and artificial, augmented reality, virtual reality. There's all kinds of tech conversations going on, but these are certainly not the only things that are driving a very different future. And all of those things that I mentioned are part of the conversation on aging, but there are other issues that are part of aging that we have to focus on. So I really wanted to identify an issue and particularly help boards, start having a conversation around an issue that, as I said when I was teasing this, right, this is an issue that affects everyone in the world every second of every day, but it has nothing to do with technology. And some people guessed that I was talking about the environment, and that's certainly a very good guess, and that will certainly be, I believe, the topic of a future briefing. But on this occasion, the issue that I wanted to focus on was something that I know has huge consequences for associations and for our society, but that has a lot of moving elements to that discussion, and wanted to try to bring at least some of those elements into the conversation that we're going to have on November 2nd.
Yeah, and as we're looking at these questions, guys, if you're watching this on Facebook Live or another platform and you're not on the Crowdcast platform, we have poll questions that Jeff provided us with. I don't even know what the right answers are to these, but we had several provocative poll questions for people who are participating live on the Crowdcast platform. And so anybody who's watching on Crowdcast right now, if you want to, jump through there and answer these questions really quickly as we get to them. But these are questions like, how many people are turning 65 every day in the United States? And you have a choice between 5,000, 10,000, or 15,000 people. And as people are voting, it's interesting to see what they're choosing. But you get the idea as you go through the questions that, wow, we're dealing with people living a lot longer. We're dealing with people getting older.
I was shocked by the question, today's 10-year-old children in the U.S. have a 50% chance of living to what age, and they're all over 100.
100, yeah, all over.
That
100.
is amazing. It means I need to start saving more for retirement.
It means there are going to be a lot of people competing for it. Think about the Walmart greeter. That job won't even be there. There's going to be a robot. I need something that I can do at 104. Yeah, compared to the rest of the industrialized world, U.S. life expectancy is on the rise, on the decline, or remaining flat. The other two questions: what is the size of the generational wealth transfer that will occur over the next 40 years? 500 billion, 10 trillion, or 30 trillion? to become a super ager, oh, there's another one after that. Yeah. To become a super ager, you should drink pomegranate juice, perform challenging physical or mental tasks, or work on Sudoku puzzles, which I've never done those. So, and then which of these orthodox beliefs shape your organization's thinking about the future of aging? Older workers are less productive, older workers cannot learn, or older workers are more costly. So Jeff, walk us through some of these questions and you know, and tell us what the right answers are. I see a lot of people voting, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you if they're right or wrong.
So just before I'm glad that people are voting on the polling questions, and I want to give them another few minutes to do that just before I start revealing the answers. So I encourage everyone who's on to go and check them out. You know, I think part of the challenge when you're doing a briefing and you have 90 minutes, right, to talk about a complicated / complex set of issues, it's knowing not only what to include, but also what not to include, and knowing how to make the decisions about those things. And so part of the research that I've been doing for this briefing is finding out things like this and figuring out, okay, which of these things are really germane to the broader themes that are going to affect associations, and which of them are interesting tidbits, but may or may not be essential to our understanding of the issues. So some of the things that I've chosen today, I think, are all very important issues for us to talk about, and they're things, you know, for us to understand the implications of what these different developments mean for our society. So, excuse me, in terms of the first polling question, how many people are turning 65 every day in the United States? The answer is 10,000. And actually it's been going on since 2010 and will continue for another 12 years beyond that. Wow. So we are actually now in the shift where what some people refer to as the baby boom generation. As you know, Kiki, I tend not to frame things in generational terms because we play pretty fast and loose with generational boundaries and definitions. So I prefer to think in terms of the demographic cohort rather than the generational terminology. But basically, those people, you know, who are in that age range, turning 65, there are a lot of them, and so every day now for the next 12 years, and every day up till now for the last 7, we've been seeing 10,000 people a day turning 65, and that creates a set of issues for our society, because at the same time that we're seeing people get older, and I believe by the year 2030, and maybe it's a little later than that, you know, we're going to see 20% or so of our population be 65 and older. Because that's happening, and because we are not seeing what's known in demography as replacement rate with regard to births, so replacement rate is generally around 2. We are below 2 in terms of replacement rate. We're going to have a much older population and an insufficient number of younger people behind to sustain, you know, that environment. So there's going to be a lot more older people in some kind of a retirement phase, potentially, if they in fact are able to retire, and a lot fewer workers behind them. And that raises all kinds of issues for our economy, for social programs, as well as for what people will do, you know, with their lives if in fact they are getting older and are able to live longer. And so it's an interesting set of questions, but the answer here is 10,000.
10,000, my gosh. So what about some of these other questions, and how do they reflect on you know, what you're going to be talking about with the briefing?
So with the second question, you know, today's 10-year-old children in the United States have a 50% chance of living to what age? You know, the thing to keep in mind with this is that in talking about the future of aging, it's not just about people getting older, it's also how is aging itself going to change over time. And even though we're concentrating our attention on a fairly narrow foresight horizon of 84 months, we still want to wrap some context, you know, around that and understand the broader implications. So the answer here for this question is 104 for the United States, but actually the answer for Japan is 107. And for kids who were actually born in 2014 in Japan, that number has gone from 107 to now a 50% chance of living to 109. And in the United States, if you go back, this is based on 2007 data. So if you go back from 2007, 10 years to 1997, the 50% chance of reaching a certain age, the age was 101, maybe 102. For kids born in 1997 who would now be 20 years old, they have a 50% chance of reaching 101, 102. What this means is that in the not so distant future, we're going to be seeing younger people living a lot longer. And that will continue, that hopefully will continue to be the case as we go forward from here. But again, it's about looking not only at the end of the spectrum of those people who are getting older now, but it's also understanding that the entire context that we're seeing is that we're seeing a lot longer lifespans in all likelihood across the board. But there are other factors in play that we also have to take into consideration.
Yeah, Japan is the canary here because they have the oldest population in the world, I think, or a lot more than the U.S. right now. More people over 65, more people over 80. So it's interesting to see what will happen to Japan because they're having the flat population growth right now as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, as we're talking about these, and we haven't even gotten through the rest of the polling questions that you asked and gotten to the answers, which are startling, to say the least. But I want to, again, put this into the context of the framework that you're providing people, this the learning cycle that you have with Foresight First. So when you're talking with boards about using foresight and how they should approach these troubling issues, where they're going to be facing challenges in every industry, so then what? Because I can imagine sitting at the table and I'm faced with these different questions, these different problems. I'm like, okay, so people are going to be living a lot longer. I don't know if Social Security is just a lost cause. Now what,
Sure.
And so what do boards do then? How do they begin to approach a problem like this?
Well, I think, the way that you need to look at it as, if you're thinking about our 120 months time span, 36 months of that is a strategy window and 84 months of that is a foresight horizon, then the issue we want to consider is what could happen within those 84 months, right? So we want to sort of identify what are the issues, what are the plausible scenarios. And then they need to go through a learning process, and there are a lot of books and articles and resources out there today advocating different ways of approaching it, different ways of conducting the work of foresight, all of which I think are very powerful and incredibly useful. But recognizing the fact that the stakeholders we're talking about, the stewards, the decision makers we're talking about on boards, are people who have day jobs. As I said, there are people who have other things going on. I wanted to give them a relatively straightforward, simple learning cycle that they could use to guide their thinking and guide their learning process, and something that they would find repeatable. Something they could do over and over again, because it's obviously not a one-off activity. You keep on doing it over and over again. So the three elements of the Foresight First learning cycle are simply sense-making, meaning-making, and decision-making. So sense-making is all about literally how do we make sense of these issues? How do we understand from a cognitive perspective, from an intellectual perspective, what it is we're talking about? So when we talk about something like the future of aging, what is it we need to understand about that on a sort of substantive level so that we can have a conversation about it? How do we understand shifts in population, demographic shifts in population? How do we understand the policy and health implications and so on? What is it we need to wrap our minds around, literally? And then we take our understanding and then we can turn it into the meaning-making phase of the cycle, which is literally the human implications, right? What are the implications of our understanding of these issues for the stakeholders that we are trying to serve today and the stakeholders that we're trying to serve in the future? And how do we have that conversation internally about how our organization and the stakeholders and the field that we serve, the industry or profession that we serve, how do we have that conversation about how our understanding of these issues is going to affect the world in which we operate as an organization? And then the final phase of that is decision making, and that's really all about what choices are we going to start making today to begin to prepare for what can come down the pike at us for these plausible scenarios of the future over the next 84 months. And in some situations, our preparations, our anticipation and preparation will be fairly small scale. We'll make lots of little decisions. And there may come a point in time as we continue through this cycle where we make bigger decisions about things, right? We're all, everyone on this, all four of us and everyone who's participating in association chat, we're all knowledge workers. And as knowledge workers, we make decisions of all sizes every day, hundreds, if not thousands of decisions every day in our work. And so all we're really asking boards to do is to take what they learn through sense making, take what they integrate through meaning making, and then bring it to bear on their decision making process. And each one of these processes that I've just mentioned is individual. Certainly, each director needs to go through this himself or herself. But they're also fundamentally social processes. So they have to do them together, right? They have to make sense of things together, because the more that they have those conversations with one another, the more that is going to be enriched by the understanding of others. And the more that they engage in meaning making together, the more empathic those conversations will be, as people can share their personal stories and experiences and their personal vulnerabilities in those conversations. And the decision making process is clearly a social process. So because these processes are social, one element of the cycle that is not represented there but is still present is that feedback loop that helps to inform the board in terms of, okay, how well are we doing at this? What new information are we gathering that helps us be more successful the next time we go through our cycle? And so then you continue to repeat that cycle over and over again, adding new information, adding new perspective, adding new insight, adding new emotion, if you will, to that discussion, so that you continue to deepen your understanding of these issues. And because these issues are so deeply related to each other, they're all very connected. Artificial intelligence is connected to aging, is connected to blockchain, is connected to the future of professions, and so on and so on. The more that we can see those connections, the better off we will be able to have these conversations, and particularly, within governing groups.
Yeah, you keep bringing up blockchain, and I swear, I'm not savvy to that. I'm not cryptocurrencies. Every time I see more stuff about that, I'm like, more to learn. But Monica actually in the comments provided me with something that might be sort of a refreshing tool to use, and it's called www.deathclock. It's death-clock.org. And when you go to that website, which I did just go explore very quickly, you're able to put in your age, your demographic info, and lifestyle, and find out when you're most likely to die. And for some of us, that may be something good to hear after learning that many of us could live past the age of 100 and don't know how we're going to do it. So there you go. If you're worried about cryptocurrency, visit deathclock.org. Thank you for that, Monica. I love it.
Monica, I appreciate you sharing that resource. I don't want people to walk away from today's association chat with the idea that the future of aging briefing or this discussion at all is going to be all about, that this is some kind of death march.
It's so important, because in so many associations, the lifetime member that is the fastest growing membership.
Well, and actually, Joan asks, other than perhaps AARP and other associations that are for older people, which associations are incorporating aging into their missions? And she says, by the way, Social Security age is going up in 2018. So so let's talk about it. who knows? I mean, you know, are there associations who are? I imagine, Jeff, that this is part of what you're trying to do is you're talking to these boards so that they are thinking about, should they include this kind of thing in their missions?
Well, I don't think it's necessary per se for organizations to add this to their missions. I think it's important for them to think of this as part of their shorter term, you know, strategy window, but also their longer term foresight horizon, right? Mm-hmm. So they need to be having these conversations and say, okay, what does an aging society mean for the work that we do, right, or that our stakeholders do? What does it mean for the association? What does it mean for those we serve? What does it mean for these fields? If in fact we're looking at some fields where people are aging out of those fields, they're approaching traditional retirement age, then, you know, do we want to start thinking about how we include other stakeholders? And actually, I think you're seeing some of this already in the continued interest that so many associations have in attracting students, right? We were getting to younger and younger ages now in terms of the student efforts in a lot of associations. It used to be, you know, college age if your field required graduate school, now, and then it's moved to high school if you required a college degree. Now it's getting even earlier than that, and of course, more and more kids are in different kinds of educational settings, so it doesn't even necessarily require more of a traditional school setting, but the outreach is going to the student level, and that makes sense because, you know, if we're seeing older populations starting to leave the scene in one way or another over the course of the next 120 months or the next 240 months, then we definitely want to be saying, okay, is there a trajectory along which this particular field has a future, or are we looking at, you know, the beginning of a shift away from this kind of work and toward other kinds of work that'll be more beneficial? And of course, again, you can't ignore the fact, I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about aging, and you look at it also through the lens, the nexus with artificial intelligence, is that at the same time we're seeing an older aging world, we're seeing the introduction of technologies that will enable us to automate many of the activities that some of those people may have performed. And so automation will be good in those places, or at least it could have a beneficial effect, let me phrase it that way, in those places that are affected by an aging society. Conversely, in those places where the populations are generally younger, which is mostly in the global south, right? We're talking about Africa and parts of Southeast Asia, the Middle East. The introduction of automation technologies could have dramatically negative effects on political and economic systems, because if those automation technologies deprive younger people of jobs, then we could see those societies facing serious resistance from those populations. So we have to look at this in a not just in a domestic context, but in a global context, and begin to understand how what we do organizationally from the standpoint of education, from the standpoint of standard setting or regulatory efforts, from the standpoint of public policy, and a variety of other things that our associations are involved in. How does aging influence our thinking about how we want to address those issues, not just in the next 36 months, but over this longer term foresight horizon?
Oh my gosh. Deloitte and airlines. This is another question from Joan. Joan, I love your questions. These are great. Deloitte and airlines and other companies have mandatory retirement at 62. Mm-hmm. What will that mean for association membership?
And even physicians they're looking at testing for physicians in their 60s and 70s. So yeah.
I mean, and so if you are sitting on the board for an association that you know makes up your base, that's definitely something that you want to consider. But you do have to wonder. I mean, this whole you know, I'm not sure, and maybe this is my next question for you, actually, Jeff, is. So you're having this briefing. I imagine you're going to go into the future of aging and talk some more about things like this, you know, aspects like this that leaders are going to need to be aware of. Is that right? Like, what is this kind of the sort of thing that you're going to go into? What are participants going to be taking away from the briefing that you're having?
So let me answer that if I can, just a second, because I just want to tie Joan's question to one of the polling questions, or the next polling question that's up there, just to sort of make a point about it, because the next polling question that's up there on compared to the rest of the industrialized world, U.S. life expectancy is, and the answer is on the decline.
Yep.
Because at the same time that we are seeing an aging population, we're also seeing declining life expectancy in the U.S. Earlier this year, the British medical journal Lancet published a research study that showed that according to the study, the U.S. is actually, I think the number sticks in my head, was 28th out of 35 industrialized nations with regard to life expectancy. Most countries in that 35 will reach a life expectancy of 90 by 2030, and the U.S. is not among them. And,
Weird.
And
okay,
the U.S.
so
actually has one of the lowest life expectancies for any high-income developed nation in the world. And in fact, by 2030, our life expectancy will be about 79.5 years for men and just a little over 83 years for women. And the reasons for that are several things. One, it has to do with the fact that we have an obesity epidemic in the U.S. It has to do with the fact that we have still today have uneven access to quality health care. Also, income inequality is a serious issue with regard to health outcomes and therefore life expectancy. And so there's actually research that will show, how someone's expected health outcomes will be different based on their zip code. And that certain codes, because of income, because of proximity to health facilities, some zip codes will have excellent life expectancy, and other zip codes will have comparatively poor life expectancy. So to go back to Joan's question, the issue that we have to grapple with is, as people retire, and if there will continue to be mandatory retirement ages, especially in your early 60s, how will that affect people's ability to participate in a variety of things that they would like to do, their own personal leisure activities? Do they want to continue to have some forms of work? What kinds of other things do they want to do in their lives? And also, will they be able to participate in organizations like associations or other professional or social groups, if in fact they are, on the one hand, living longer, but just because of certain structural features, just generally speaking, health outcomes are better as society continues to as things continue to grow in society. But the specific outcomes for those people may not be as positive if they lack the resources to be able to sustain themselves for 25 or more years in retirement. So there's a lot of issues that have to be teased out there. There are some people who believe that we will see the end of retirement because anti-aging research and pharmaceuticals will solve the problem. There are others who disagree that we will be able to make significant increases in human lifespan. Some people will say, it'll be possible to live to 150, and then there are others who say that even to this point in time, we've not been able to crack that code, and it's unlikely we'll be able to have dramatic increases in human life expectancy to numbers like that. So that remains to be seen, but it's an interesting set of issues that we have to begin to explore.
It most definitely is, and it makes me wonder about some of these others, so now I'm thinking that the death clock thing was not such a funny joke, because now I feel like, my chances, I don't know. I need to plug in my zip code and figure out what my chances are. So wait a second.
Question for you.
Yeah.
But also assumes something like about that retirement. I know, should I be working that for the next I definitely probably have a life that's full of side hustles. I do not want to operate at this level long in my 70s. I don't for all reasons. That one, you want to make a contribution, and then you want to engage in things that you find fun or affirming. And that, essentially, I just think about my own journey, how hard I had to face getting access to things only because of my age. Being young, and I can't get a Heisman for people younger than me. And be the person that annoyed me when I was earlier. So I also need to step aside to allow for younger generations to have access, to a lot of leadership opportunities and that as well. So I do believe we're going to live longer. I would be surprised, particularly people in my age range and younger would want to work full time, well into our 70s and 80s as well. Like, I don't know if the desire will be there. What does the research say about that? The desire to work full time, well into our 70s and 80s and beyond.
Well, I think that, one interpretation of the, we've had a certain interpretation of what people's lives are like, right? So that the first part of our lives up until, the end of high school, up until the end of college, up at the end of graduate school, so maybe anywhere between from birth to about 18 to, say, 25, is all about accumulating knowledge and building credentials so that you can then have a career that goes from 25 to roughly 65, right? So we spend 25 years essentially preparing ourselves for life, and then spending 40 years living that life, and then we spend another, say, 20 years or so in retirement. And I think, one interpretation of this that I've seen is that, certainly, kids are still going to have educational experiences, and, maybe it'll go up to age 18 or something like that. But then things will be different, right? We'll be going back and forth between working and learning, and then at some point introducing more leisure into it. It'll be moving from place to place. Instead of having that very clear linear process that I just described, it'll be much more complicated, right? We'll be doing different things at different times. And certainly one of the things that we know that's helpful for people who are in traditional retirement ages is to be working on things around which they feel a sense of purpose, even if they're not being compensated for it. But the issues that come into play here are things that I've already mentioned, which is, how healthy will people be? Will they be able to sustain this kind of lifestyle based on health? And what kind of resources will they have access to, right? And again, we can't just ignore the issue of income inequality, just generally speaking, but then we also have to factor in, as I said before, with more artificial intelligence, will we come to a point, and more automation, will we come to a point where we have to have a serious discussion in the United States, as they are starting to have in Europe, around universal benefit income, so that people who are displaced because of automation, can generate some kind of income from a governmental source, so that they can, in fact, live and do exactly what you're describing, Tamala, which is, sort of live in part on UBI and then live in part on side hustles, and kind of move from different kinds of activities. So I think it's there's interesting possibilities that will occur, and there's a lot more questions at this moment than I think probably than there are answers, which is why we have to give consideration to those plausible scenarios. So just to go back to Kiki's earlier question, what I will do on November 2nd is kind of guide people through this foresight first learning cycle that I mentioned earlier, where we will do a process of sense making around all of this, and I'm sure talking about some of the very same issues we've been discussing today, and bringing some new ones in as well, and then going to a meaning making phase and say, okay, what does this really mean for associations? A lot of the questions that people are asking among those who have already registered for the briefing are questions about, what does this mean for my membership? What does this mean for leadership, and so on? And I think those are important questions, but I also think that there are questions for associations that run much deeper than what I would regard as those fairly instrumental kinds of questions that are our concerns today, right? These are our concerns today about aging. What we have to really look at is not just our current concerns, but what our unfolding concerns should be about a world that is getting older, and a world in which people will be living longer, but also a world in which other factors may influence people's ability to be full contributors in some sense in our organizations. And then there'll be things for people to take away from that conversation around how they should be approaching the decision-making process. I give them, questions to reflect on that board should be discussing in some kind of substantive way around what are the big questions that they should be facing. So that's what's going to occur on November the 2nd with people who register for the briefing. And if I may just do a quick plug here, I so appreciate being on association chat to talk about it, and I just want to offer everyone who's an association chat follower a promo code of hashtag AssenChat15, which I get to say it that way because I'm responsible for that hashtag. I saddled Kiki with that hashtag 8 years ago. And
it's done okay. It's done okay.
So she's posted it now, but it's hashtag AssenChat15 is the promo code if you would like to register, and feel free to pass that on to people, because I think it'll be a very compelling conversation.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, I see that we are running out of time, but we didn't quite get through, I think, all of the polling questions. So
yeah,
if you are,
can I just give you the quick answers?
Please do.
So on
Please.
the generational wealth transfer, the generational wealth transfer over 40 years, the answer is $30 trillion. From the so-called boomer generation to X and millennial. One financial institution estimates that. To become a super ager, which means someone who is in their 60s, 70s, 80s, whose memory and attention is not just great for someone of their age, but is comparable to someone who is in their mid-20s, right? And these people do exist. So research done at MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, shows that these people exist, and it has to do with thickness in the cortex of the brain in certain regions that enables them to have very strong memory and attention. And so the answer here is perform challenging physical or mental tasks, learning a new language, or having a very rigorous workout regimen. And one of the researchers wrote about this, and she said it's not enough to just do something that's hard. You have to do it to the point of yuck, is what she said. So you have to do it to the point where you feel bad by doing it, but by virtue of feeling bad, even though in the short term you feel bad, the long-term benefits will be that it will have strength for your memory and attention. And then the final question is really, these are orthodox beliefs that exist across organizations. So really, I'd be surprised if all of them weren't part of the conversations that occur in organizations of different types. Less productivity, older workers not learning, older workers being more costly. And I think the point here is that one of the things we really have to take stock of in our organizations, as I always say, is what are the orthodox beliefs that are shaping our thinking about these issues, and how are those orthodox beliefs getting in the way of having a serious discussion about what the future of aging could really look like. And so I would challenge everyone who has been listening today and watching this today to go back to your associations and start having that discussion. What orthodox beliefs do we have about the future of aging that might actually be negative, deleterious to our efforts to be successful in a world in which aging is going to be a huge issue for all kinds of organizations?
Wow. I tell you what, I don't know, Nabil, Tamala, blown away. A lot of this stuff, I had heard a little bit about it. I definitely heard that we might be living longer. Now I'm not so sure based on where I'm. You know what? I'm just going to keep praying every night, and we'll just see what happens tomorrow. But
you live in a good zip code, Kiki. Yeah. Live in a good Alexandria, Springfield. You're in good shape.
Okay, well, if you say so, then I hope so. But yeah, no, this looks fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the promotional code that you guys, if you're watching this is part of the benefit of being a part of Association Chat. Thank you so much for sharing that with our audience today. And if people are trying to reach out to you and want to find out more about, the session coming up, where can they reach you?
You can reach me on my website, foresightfirst.io, or people can email me at jeff@foresightfirst.io.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. Oh my gosh, you guys. I don't know what to say. I definitely better start putting away more money in my retirement.
Seriously.
Yeah.
A little bit nervous about that. But this is
not
really
going to be around for us, unfortunately.
No, I really didn't expect it to be, though, to be honest. I think, we've been hearing about that for a while. So for all of you out there, I hope that you've gained some new insights. Tamala, Nabil, was there anything that really struck you in particular that you're going to be walking away from this conversation with?
I mean, if 10-year-olds are growing to 104, I'm still...
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's amazing that we have such great healthcare in this country, that half the kids in this country are going to be that age. It also saddens me that the other half doesn't. I mean, I'm very passionate about health disparities.
Yeah.
So I want to try to work on reducing that. And I see my association work as trying to do that. But that's I'm just blown away by that stat.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Tamala?
You know, all the topics, you know, this is just as real. You know, public policy around immigration, you know, related to diversity, inclusion, we're engaging the emergent group of leaders. These things, you know, so it's not about walking and chewing gum. It's walking and chewing gum and patting our heads and rubbing our stomachs and all these things at the same time.
Yeah.
As association, you know, it's not focusing on the thing, you know, it's one of the things from Black Twitter, all of the things, you know, that we need to focus on, you know, to be prepared for the future. So
I think
really
yeah, I think that for me, I just see how important it really is to understand better ways to communicate and figuring out how to have those conversations. You know, we all get so busy, and obviously it's like every week we interview different people, and we all of these things, and it's exciting, it's overwhelming. And yet, if we can't communicate with our boards or communicate with the leaders that we're working with about a lot of these challenges, we aren't going to be able to be that speedboat. You know, our associations aren't going to be able to, you know, change and be and adapt and be nimble the way that they need to be. And so that communication is so important. So I think this work that you're doing, Jeff, great work. For all of you, I do hope that you've gotten something from this and you think about it as you move through your days, your weeks, the months ahead. Next week, we're going to be talking with a special guest, Grammy Award-winning songwriter Billy Kirsch. We're going to be talking about, I know, it's exciting. This is going to be a good one. And it's going to be talking about ways that you can tap into your creativity and be able to apply that to problem solving for your organizations moving forward. So it's going to be a good one. I think that I encourage everybody to participate in it. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have
Bye-bye,
a great week,
everyone.
everybody. Bye. Happy Tuesday. All right.
Well done.
And goodbye. Well done. Well done.